Unaware his wife was the secret billionaire who quietly became the controlling owner of the company he worked for, he left her and their sick triplets to marry his boss. What happened next was cold, legal, and unstoppable. He didn't just walk away from his marriage. He walked away from 3 fragile lives. First in a neonatal hospital ward, where oxygen alarms screamed and doctors ran, and later in a boardroom and a courtroom that would erase the life he thought he was building. By the time the courtroom settled into silence, by the time the judge granted emergency custody, enforced support orders, and documented abandonment, Evan Mason still didn't understand how badly he had misjudged everything. Because long before the divorce papers, long before the wedding photos, long before his public collapse, he made his cruelest decision while his wife was standing beside 3 incubators. While Claire sat sleepless for nights, watching one baby's oxygen drop without warning, while nurses quietly noted every missed visit, while doctors warned her that stress alone could undo weeks of progress, Evan took a phone, called in a quiet restaurant, and said something that would later be recorded, time-stamped, and replayed in court. "I can't do this anymore. Not I'm scared. Not I'm overwhelmed. Just escape clean and selfish." He didn't ask which baby was critical. He didn't come back when one nearly stopped breathing. He didn't hesitate before moving in with his boss, the woman who made him feel seen. What Evan didn't know, what he never asked, was that while he was planning a new life, his wife had already signed documents that quietly made her the controlling owner of the very company he worshipped. She didn't scream in the hospital. She didn't confront him at his wedding. She didn't beg. She documented. She gathered proof. She waited for the law to speak louder than emotion. And when the truth finally surfaced, not in whispers, but in board meetings, court filings, and sealed envelopes, it didn't just shock Evan. It stripped him. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like mistaking silence for weakness all over again. When you subscribe, you stand with every woman underestimated, every child protected by quiet strength, and every mind that chose strategy over despair. The machines beeped too fast. Claire Mason, 32, flinched as the sound cut through the white hospital room like a warning she could not silence. 3 incubators stood in a row, glowing softly under sterile lights. Inside them lay her newborn triplets, Noah, Lily, and Emma, each no bigger than her forearm, each fighting quietly to stay alive. Claire stood between them, her spine straight, her jaw locked. One hand slid through the opening of Noah's incubator sleeve, her finger curling gently around his. The other hand twisted a plain silver ring over and over, a nervous habit she had never broken. She had not slept in almost 40 hours, but her eyes were sharp. Fear had trained them that way. Her personal phone vibrated in her scrub pocket. She didn't look at it. Not yet. Claire leaned closer to the glass and whispered, "I'm here." Even though the machines didn't need reassurance. Maybe she did. The phone vibrated again. She pulled it out just long enough to see the notification, unknown secure line board packet ready for review. Her breath caught for half a second. She knew exactly what that meant. It was the encrypted number her family's trust used when regulatory approvals cleared. She locked the screen without opening it and slid that phone away. Behind her, footsteps approached. Sonia Mason, 34, Claire's older sister and only remaining family, entered with a large tote bag slung over her shoulder. Baby socks spilled out the top, along with medical forms and a half-crushed granola bar. "You didn't sleep," Sonia said softly. It wasn't a question. "They did," Claire replied, eyes still on the monitors. "That's good enough." Sonia moved closer, placing a hand on Claire's back. The muscles felt like a wire pulled too tight. A nurse stepped in quietly. Talia Brooks, late 40s, calm eyes, the kind of nurse who spoke only when it mattered. She adjusted a monitor, checked a chart, then hesitated. "Your husband missed the last 2 rounds," Talia said gently. "Morning and evening." Claire nodded once. No anger, no surprise, just confirmation of something she had already felt. "I'll note it in the chart," Talia added, carefully neutral. "Patterns matter for discharge planning." Claire gave another small nod. Talia left. Sonia watched her closely. "Evan said he'd come this morning," she murmured. Claire didn't answer. She was still holding Noah's finger, afraid that if she let go, something would slip away forever. A few minutes later, Claire stepped into a small consultation room down the hall. The air smelled different here, paper, polish, quiet money instead of antiseptic. Sitting at the table was Lionel Graves, early 60s, gray hair, precise posture. To the hospital staff, he passed as a concerned family friend. To Claire, he was the keeper of a life she had hidden on purpose. On the table lay a thick folder stamped, "Hartford Trust Private." Lionel spoke in a low voice. "The regulators cleared the last hurdle," he said. "The board packet is finalized. We're ready to execute." Claire sat. Her hands were suddenly steady. Lionel opened the folder and slid a document toward her. "One formality," he said. "You need to sign the acquisition authorization." He paused, pen poised between them. "Do you want to sign as Claire Mason?" he asked carefully. "Or as Claire Hartwell?" Her chest tightened. Claire Hartwell was the name she had not used in years. The name tied to oil rights, shipping stakes, silent holdings, and a family fortune structured into trusts and corporate shells so clean they barely left fingerprints. She picked up the pen. Signed, Claire Hartwell. Lionel slid a second document forward. Acquisition, authorization, majority stake, Klein Reyes Holdings. The holding company that owned the majority of the firm where Evan worked. "This gives you controlling interest," Lionel said. "Through the trust, public filings will only show Hartford entities for now." Claire didn't smile. "It gives my children a future." The room blurred, and memory pulled her backward. She was 22 again, standing at her parents' funeral in a black dress that didn't fit right. Lionel's voice over the casket flowers. "They left everything in trust. You are the sole beneficiary." She remembered signing document after document with shaking hands, her eyes swollen from crying. "Lock it away," she had said back then. "I don't want it touching my life." Years later, she was a junior analyst in a different firm, correcting senior executives in silence, watching her ideas reappear in other men's mouths. She learned quickly. Power survived best when hidden. Her father's voice returned, steady. "If they don't know what you're worth, they can't take it from you." When she met Evan, she told him nothing. She became Claire Mason. A woman with a modest job, simple tastes, and no inheritance. She wanted love that chose her without calculation. Back in the present, she wiped her eyes quickly. Lionel leaned closer. "The acquisition is under strict confidentiality. No press yet, no filings that trace to your personal name until the regulatory window closes." "Good," Claire said. "I don't want any of this touching Evan's job yet, or the babies." Lionel's gaze softened. "When ownership changes, people get exposed, Claire. Old loyalties, quiet misconduct. You'll see things." "Not me," she said. "Not until my kids are safe." She slipped her second phone, the one Lionel only ever called, back into her bag and returned to the incubators. This time she pulled out her personal phone and typed, "The babies are more stable. Doctors are hopeful. Thought you'd want to know." To Evan Mason, 35, mid-level executive, ambitious and exhausted. Minutes passed. His reply popped up. "Can't talk. Big night. Boss invited me. This could change everything for us." Claire stared at the screen. She looked at her children, then at the signed acquisition papers tucked in her bag. She didn't answer. For the first time, she wondered why her husband no longer felt like someone she could reach, and whether the world he was stepping into at work would soon collide with the world she had always kept hidden. Some doors were already opening, others were about to close. The elevator doors slid open too fast. Evan Mason, 35, stepped out into the glass-walled hallway with a report clutched in his hand, his smile already fixed in place. From the outside, he looked like a man on the rise, tailored suit, polished shoes, confident stride. From the inside, his right leg wouldn't stop bouncing. This place mattered to him, more than he would admit. Phones buzzed, keyboards clicked, voices stayed low behind glass doors. Power lived here, and Evan wanted to belong to it the way people want oxygen. "Man," a voice called out, "you're basically living here now." Evan turned. Jules Benton, late 30s, his closest co-worker, and the only person who still spoke to him like a human instead of a title, leaned against the wall with a coffee cup. Evan forced a laugh. "Somebody's got to keep the lights on." Jules raised an eyebrow. "Your kid's still in the NICU?" Evan nodded once. "They're stable. Claire says they're fighters." Jules studied him for a second, then let the silence sit. That was why Evan liked him. He knew when not to push. The energy in the hallway shifted. Marissa Klein appeared. Early 40s, tall, sharp, senior executive, Her suit fit like it had been tailored around her authority. She moved like someone who never asked permission. "Evan?" she said warmly, like she'd been waiting for him. Before he could respond, she reached out and adjusted his tie. She didn't ask. Her fingers brushed his collar, the touch precise and a fraction too slow. Anyone watching could call it mentorship. Anyone feeling it knew better. Evan froze. Marissa smiled. "You rush in the mornings," she said. "You need someone to slow you down." Thanks," he replied, clearing his throat. "You're wasted on middle management," she said casually, as if commenting on the weather. Evan straightened. "I'm doing what I can." "No, Evan," she said softly. "You're doing what you've been allowed to do." The word hit harder than he expected. Allowed. "Walk with me," she added. They moved down the hallway together. Jules watched them go, unease tightening his jaw. "I'm having a private dinner tonight," Marissa continued as they walked. "Career planning. A few investors. I want you there." Evan hesitated. "I don't know if I can. Claire's at the hospital and the babies." Marissa stopped. The smile faded, but she didn't look angry, just colder. "You talk a lot about sacrifice," she said. "You never talk about reward." Evan swallowed. Across the open office, Vivian Klein, Marissa's PR aide and distant cousin, sat at her desk typing. She glanced up just in time to see Marissa's hand still resting lightly on Evan's arm. She smirked faintly and went back to her screen. She'd seen this pattern before. Evan nodded slowly. "What time?" 8, Marissa said. "Dress sharp. People who can open doors will be watching." As she walked away, Evan felt taller, lighter, seen. Near a glass door, Noah Vance, early 40s, the company's compliance officer, pretended to read a policy memo. His eyes, however, followed the little scene. The touch, the pause, the way power leaned too close. He didn't say anything. He just stored it. Back at his desk, Evan sat down, the report suddenly unimportant. His phone buzzed. 3 missed calls. Claire. Her name still had the heart emoji she had added years ago when they'd been living in a small apartment and dreaming of a life they could barely afford. He imagined the hospital lights, the machines, the soft strength in her voice. Then he remembered Marissa's fingers on his tie. Her words, "allowed to." His mind slipped backward. He was 10, sitting at the top of the stairs, listening to his parents' voices. His father's words floated up clearly. "Being good doesn't matter. Being seen matters." Evan had kept that line like a rule taped to the inside of his chest. Back in the present, his phone buzzed again. A text from Marissa. "Wear the dark suit tonight, the one that makes you look like you already belong at the table." He flipped his phone face down, ignoring Claire's name even as the guilt pricked. Across the office, Jules watched him. "You okay?" Jules asked. "Yeah," Evan lied. "Just busy." As the day wore on, whispers moved through the office. Something about a new majority investor. Something about a quiet acquisition. Evan overheard Marissa laughing with another executive. "One day," she said lightly, "this whole place will answer to someone new. Wealth you've never even heard of." "Yeah, right," Evan scoffed. Marissa's eyes glinted. "You'd be surprised who holds power quietly." The word stayed with him long after she walked away. That evening, Evan stood in the restroom, adjusting the same tie she had straightened earlier. He practiced his smile, trying to look like the version of himself he thought he had to be. His phone vibrated again. Claire. He let it ring out. He didn't know that at that exact moment, she was filling out another consent form beside 3 incubators and starting to write things down. Someone else had already noticed the way his absence repeated. Someone else was already watching, and someone on the ownership level he worshipped had just quietly become his wife. The alarm screamed before anyone spoke. Claire jolted upright from the hospital floor, where she'd been stretching her back. The sharp, shrill sound cut through the neonatal unit, and for one terrifying moment, her heart convinced her that this was the call, the one they'd warned her might come. She rushed forward, but Dr. Saeed Rahman was already there. "It's okay," he said, calm but focused as he silenced the alarm and checked the monitor. Early 50s, senior neonatal specialist. His voice had carried her through too many long nights. "It's a monitor recalibrating," he explained. "Not a DSAT." Claire exhaled shakily, her knees momentarily weak. Dr. Rahman glanced at the charts. "The new treatment plan is working," he said. "All 3 are responding." Noah's lungs are still fragile, but he's holding his own. Claire listened the way some people pray completely. These next few weeks are critical, he continued. They need stability, predictable faces. The environment around them matters. They'll have it, Claire said. Dr. Rahman handed her a clipboard. More consent forms. She signed quickly, the paper rustling slightly in her unsteady hands. She smoothed the sheet flat, as if she could press her tremor out of existence. You're doing everything you can, Dr. Rahman said. Not comfort assessment. She nodded, afraid that if she spoke, the fear would spill over. After he left, the beeping machine settled into a steady rhythm. Her phone rang. Evan. She answered immediately. Hey, they're breathing on their own right now. The new meds are helping. That's great, Evan said. His voice was bright, almost too bright. Listen, I can't make it tonight. Claire's stomach tightened. In the background, she heard laughter. The clink of cutlery. A low hum of conversation, not an office. Where are you? She asked quietly. A last-minute dinner, he said quickly. Marissa pulled some investors together. This could be big for us. I can't leave. Claire glanced back at the incubators. Noah's chest rose and fell in tiny, determined movements. She could have said, they almost thought Noah was crashing. She could have said, I need you here more than they need you there. Instead, she swallowed the words. Okay, she said softly. Just answer if the hospital calls. There was a pause. I'm doing this for us, Claire, Evan insisted, so we're not always scraping by, so you don't have to worry about bills and everything. The words sounded like love, like care, like protection. But the sounds behind him, laughter, clinking glass, Marissa's low voice didn't match. I know you think that, Claire said. It was the closest she could get to agreement without lying to herself. She ended the call before he could say more. Behind her, Sonia had been watching. That didn't sound like a meeting, Sonia said quietly. Not everything that hurts is proof, Claire replied. Not yet. Nurse Talia approached, a chart cradled against her chest. Mrs. Mason, she said gently. Your husband phoned the nurse's station earlier. He asked us to tell you he's doing what he can at work. He said the same thing yesterday. Same words. Claire looked up. I only mention it, Talia added carefully, because patterns matter when we write notes. If you ever need those notes, they'll be there. Claire absorbed that. That night, as the unit lights dimmed, Claire sat in the corner chair, her legs tucked up under her. The triplets slept under faint blue glows. She opened the Notes app on her phone. She didn't type a paragraph. She wrote a heading. Visits Evan missed, canceled. Underneath, she entered today's date. Then the last 2 nights, she hesitated, then added, called unit instead of Claire. Same phrase used. Sonia noticed. What are you doing? Preparing, Claire said simply. For what? For whatever his story becomes. Her second phone buzzed in the bag at her feet, the secure one. She pulled it out just enough to see the message banner. Acquisition tranche cleared. Klein Reyes majority confirmed. Effective date set. Her heart skipped not with excitement, but with the weight of responsibility. Her life as a hidden owner was now fused to the life where she hadn't even had time to shower. She locked the screen before Sonia could see. You okay? Sonia asked. Just tired, Claire answered. She looked at the incubators again. The lie she had just heard over the phone hadn't sounded cruel. It had sounded reasonable, noble even. I'm doing this for us. Lies that sounded like love, she realized, were the most dangerous kind. They were the ones other people believed for you. Somewhere across town, Evan raised a glass and let another person's approval wash over him, convincing himself he was still a good man. Somewhere in Claire's phone, the first lines of a timeline had just been written. The front door closed with a dull click that felt too loud. Claire stood just inside the entryway, one hand still on the knob, as if she wasn't entirely sure she was allowed to be here. They'd lived in this small house for years, but after days of living inside hospital walls, it felt like a set built for someone else's life. The baby monitor clipped to her bag crackled faintly, transmitting the soft hiss of oxygen and tiny breaths from the NICU feed. The hospital had given her remote access to the audio, so she'd agree to go home for a few hours. Sonia had driven her. Wash your hair, she'd ordered. Change clothes. Eat something that isn't from a vending machine. I'll stay with the babies. Claire dropped her keys in the bowl by the door and walked toward the bedroom. Halfway down the hall, she stopped. The air smelled wrong. Not trash, not stale laundry, just different. Not the mix of detergent and exhaustion she was used to. She stepped into the bedroom. Evan's suit jacket hung over the back of the chair instead of in the closet. He was usually careful with his clothes. She picked it up, meaning only to hang it properly. A small card slid from the inside pocket and landed face down on the floor. Claire bent down and turned it over. Valet claim ticket date, 3 nights ago. Hotel name, an expensive downtown hotel she only saw in glossy magazines. Her thumb pressed into the thin paper. 3 nights ago. He had told her he was staying late to finish reports. Her heart didn't race. It stilled. Slowly, she lifted the jacket closer to her face and inhaled. Under the faint scent of Evan's cologne was something sharper, floral, confident. Not the baby soap and coffee that usually clung to both of them. Perfume. The baby monitor crackled again, a tiny whimper through static, one of the triplets shifting in their sleep. The reminder pulled her back from the edge of spiraling. She folded the valet ticket and slid it into her pocket. If I'm wrong, she whispered, I destroy my family. If I'm right, he already has. Her phone buzzed. Evan. She stared at the screen for a beat, then answered. Hey, he said, sounding distracted. I forgot to tell you I can't come home tonight either. Things are complicated at work. Where are you? Claire asked. Another pause. Just a fraction too long. At the office, he said. The lie was smooth, practiced. She didn't challenge him. The babies are sleeping, she said instead. Noah had a scare yesterday, but he pulled through. That's good, Evan said quickly. I'm glad. Look, I have to go into another discussion. I'll make it up to you, okay? The line went dead before she could answer. Claire sat on the edge of the bed, jacket still in her lap, and stared at the open closet. She didn't cry. Her body felt too tired to give up the water. A knock on the front door. Sonia opened it with her spare key. You find clothes? She called out. Claire stood and began pulling clean shirts from drawers. Yeah. I'm ready to go back. Sonia noticed her clenched hand. Claire? I'm fine, Claire said. Let's go. They returned to the hospital. Talia met them at the unit entrance. They've been steady, Talia said. Then, more quietly, no call from your husband today. Claire nodded. Thank you for telling me. That night, after Sonia dozed off in the visitor's chair, Claire stepped into a quiet corner of the hallway and pulled out her phone. She scrolled to Lionel's number. Do you still know someone discreet? She asked when he answered. You mean an investigator? Lionel replied, unflinching. Yes, but not for revenge, Claire said. I need facts I could put in front of a judge if I had to. Nothing illegal. Nothing that could blow back on the trust. Understood, Lionel said. I'll have someone call you. Use your personal number, not the secure one. The next afternoon, Claire sat in a modest cafe 2 blocks from the hospital. Not hidden, not dramatic, just far enough that she could breathe. Across from her sat Rita Chang, mid-40s, neutral expression, sharp eyes. I document patterns, Rita said. I don't tell clients what to feel about them. Claire nodded. I need to know where my children's father is when he says he's working late, and how often it involves his boss. Rita didn't flinch. I can track publicly accessible records receipts, cameras in public spaces, and anything a court can subpoena later if needed, Rita said. No hacking, no gray areas. I don't work in shadows. I work in timelines. Good, Claire said. If this goes to court, I need whatever you find to survive cross-examination. Rita gave a single, approving nod. Then we go slow and clean. After they parted, Claire sat for a moment longer, unwilling to go back to the hospital with this new layer of reality pressing on her chest. She opened her social media app to distract herself and immediately saw a story at the top of the feed reposted by the official company account she followed as a passive investor. Marissa's profile picture. A boomerang of champagne glasses clinking, Evan's username tagged in bright letters at the bottom, the caption, "A new chapter begins." Claire stared at the looping video. Evan's face wasn't visible, but his watch, one she'd saved for months to buy him, caught the light at the edge of the frame. She locked the screen. Her heart didn't shatter, it hardened around something simple. Whatever happened next, she would not be the one guessing. The jacket, the ticket, the perfume, the story, and now, an investigator. Somewhere across town, Evan convinced himself that new chapters were about freedom. Claire was already making sure there would be a record of how the last one had ended. The monitor didn't beep this time. It screamed. Claire spun toward Noah's incubator just as the oxygen saturation on the screen plummeted, numbers dropping from green to a furious red. "DZAT," a nurse shouted. "Bag him now," Dr. Rahman ordered. Already at the bedside, hands moved fast, tiny mask, oxygen bag, gentle but urgent compressions. The small space around Noah's incubator filled with bodies and wires. Claire stumbled backward until her shoulders hit the wall. Her hands shook so violently she had to lace her fingers together to stop herself from rushing in and getting in the way. "Claire," Sonia said, gripping her arm tightly. "Look at me. They've done this before. He's not alone." Claire's eyes stayed locked on Noah's chest. It fluttered unevenly beneath the tubing. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She almost ignored it. The screen lit up. Evan Hope flared up on reflex. Irrational. Desperate. Maybe he was calling because he felt something was wrong. Maybe he was already on his way. She answered with shaking hands. "Evan, Noah's crashing. They're trying to. I can't do this anymore," Evan said. In the background she heard low music and the faint clink of cutlery, the muted calm of a restaurant, not the harsh beeps and frantic footsteps around her. The words were so out of sync with the terror around her that for a moment she thought she'd misheard. "Do what?" she managed. "Be their father?" "Don't twist it," Evan snapped. "I've been drowning, Claire. I'm killing myself at work, and you act like it's never enough. I feel like I don't exist unless I'm at that hospital." Behind her, a nurse adjusted Noah's mask. Dr. Rahman watched the numbers with surgical focus. Claire pressed her back harder into the wall. "They're sick," she said. "They need both of us." "They need you," Evan said. "Marissa gets me. She sees what I'm capable of. She doesn't make me feel like I'm just failing all the time." There it was. Claire could barely get air into her own lungs. "You're leaving us, while your son can't breathe." "You're making this dramatic," Evan replied, his voice disturbingly calm. "I'm moving out. I'll set up a transfer when I can. I can't keep doing this just to drown in guilt. I'm allowed to be happy." A harsh little laugh escaped her, half disbelief, half broken. "You're not choosing happiness," she said. "You're choosing escape and calling it happiness." Silence. "I hope one day you'll understand," he said finally. The call clicked off. Claire stared at the screen, the call duration mocking her. Seconds. Just seconds. Enough to break something that had taken years to build. Her legs gave out. Sonia caught her, easing her down before she hit the floor. Claire's phone slipped from her hand and landed face up on Sonia's thigh. The little red dot blinked on the call log, recording in progress. Sonia froze. In the earlier chaos, she grabbed at Claire's hand, and her thumb must have hit the record button without meaning to. She looked at Claire. "Do you want me to stop it?" Claire looked from Sonia to Noah's incubator. The numbers had started to climb slowly back toward the safe range. "Leave it," Claire whispered. Her voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "If he can walk away this easily, we're going to need proof he did." Across the room, the alarm softened. "He's stabilizing," Dr. Rahman said after a few agonizing minutes. "That was close, but he's back in range." Claire blinked hard, forcing her vision to clear, and pushed herself upright. She walked to the incubator and laid her forehead gently against the glass. "I'm here," she whispered to Noah. "I'm not going anywhere." Her second phone buzzed in her bag. She pulled it out with her free hand. "Board meeting confirmed, ownership transition briefing, tomorrow, 10 a.m. The words barely registered. The two worlds of her life, the one where she signed as Hartwell and the one where she sat beside her son, were colliding whether she wanted them to or not. Sonia stepped closer. "Who are you calling?" she asked quietly. Claire looked at her children. At the red imprint the incubator edge had left on her forehead, at the screen, still showing the tiny red recording dot from Evan's call. "A lawyer," she said. She opened her browser and typed, "Family law, emergency custody specialist near me." One name stood out again and again in reviews that mentioned words like calm and unshakable. Grace and Becky, family law. Emergency custody. Claire hit call. The phone rang once. Twice. Grace and Becky's office, a composed voice answered. Claire swallowed. "My husband just walked out on our premature triplets," she said. "One of them almost died while he told me he was choosing happiness." I need to know what the law can do before he decides he's suddenly ready to be a father again. Come in, the voice replied. Today, bring any medical records you have. Claire ended the call and looked back at her children. Some doors in her life had just slammed shut. Others, heavy, legal, and documented, were about to open. The door closed with a quiet, deliberate click. Claire Mason felt the sound more than she heard it. Grace Mbecky's office wasn't designed for emotional breakdowns. It was neat, precise, and edged in a way that made it clear. This room was for decisions, not drama. Claire sank into the chair opposite the desk. In her left hand, a thick folder of medical reports. In her right hand, a crumpled valet ticket from an expensive hotel. On her phone, screen dark but safely backed up, the still-saved recording of Evan saying, "I can't do this anymore," while Noah fought for his life. Grace, early 40s, hair pulled back, dark suit, calm eyes, didn't offer tissues. She didn't soften her voice. She leaned forward slightly. "Which baby is most medically fragile right now?" "Noah," Claire answered without hesitation. "His oxygen drops without warning. They call it desatting." Grace nodded. "Good. We start from what's urgent, not what's emotional." The word stung, but in a way that made Claire sit up straighter. Grace flipped open the medical folder and scanned quickly. Premature triplets, extended NICU stay, high-risk lung complications. She tapped one page. "You've been present for all of this?" "Every day," Claire said. "Every night unless they force me to rest." "Has your husband been present?" Grace asked. Claire swallowed. "At first. Then he said work was getting intense. He started missing visits. He called the nurses station instead of me." "Does he send money?" Grace asked. "Consistent support? Not promises, actual transfers." "No," Claire said quietly. "Not since he left. He said he'd send money when he can." "Is there another relationship?" Grace asked, her tone still flat. "He's with his boss," Sonia answered softly from the chair beside Claire. "He said she understands him. We have a recording of the call where he left." Grace's eyes sharpened not with gossip, but with focus. "Let me hear it," she said. Claire unlocked her phone, scrolled, and played the audio. Sonia watched Grace's face instead of the screen. Evan's voice filled the quiet office. "I can't do this anymore. They need you. Marissa understands me. I'm choosing happiness for once." Grace listened without expression. When the recording ended, she asked only one question. "Did he know he was on speaker?" "Yes," Sonia said. "We were both standing there. The nurse was in the room. He knows we were in a public, clinical space and still said it." Grace nodded slowly. "Our jurisdiction allows one-party consent," she said. "You were present on the call. This recording is legally usable. He can argue context, but he can't argue that he didn't say those words." She closed the phone screen gently and placed it on the desk. "That's not revenge," Grace said. "That's evidence." Claire's shoulders sagged a fraction, as if her body finally believed she wasn't overreacting. "Before we go any further," Grace said, "I need to understand the financial side. You said on the phone that you could support the children even if he didn't. How?" Claire hesitated. "I inherited a significant estate," she said finally, "trust managed. My legal name on the trust is Claire Hartwell, not Mason. My parents taught me that money destroys relationships. I locked it away. Even my husband doesn't know the scale of it. We lived on our salaries and insurance on purpose," she added quietly. "If I ever touched the trust, it was supposed to be for survival, not for lifestyle." "Is your wealth public?" Grace asked. "No," Claire replied. "The trust owns shells. The shells own assets. My name doesn't show up on public filings yet. Even the acquisition I just signed for." She stopped herself. Grace didn't miss it. "Acquisition?" Claire exhaled. There was no point half-trusting her lawyer. "I acquired controlling interest, through the trust, in the holding company that owns my husband's firm," she said quietly. "Klein Reyes Holdings. The board knows me as Hartwell. My husband doesn't know at all." Grace was silent for a long moment. "All right," she said at last. "Then we separate your roles. In this office, you are Claire Mason, mother of 3 premature infants. The Hartwell side stays in the background until it serves a clear legal purpose." She stood and walked to a small whiteboard. "In a crisis like this," she said, uncapping a marker, "we don't lead with emotion, we lead with structure." She wrote, "Emergency temporary custody temporary support order, divorce petition, strategic timing, Protective clause. Stability and supervised contact. First, Grace said, tapping the board. We file for emergency temporary custody, premature infants, plus documented abandonment, and a recorded call of him choosing a new life. Judges don't like that. She wrote. Medical risk plus abandonment, next to it. Second, we request a temporary support order based on his income and lifestyle, not on his promises, she continued. He doesn't get to send money when he can. He sends what the law says he must. Third, she underlined diverse petition. We file the petition, but we time it alongside the custody motion. We control the narrative. Children's needs first, emotions second. Fourth, she said, underlining protective clause. We ask for terms that keep him from disrupting medical routines. No surprise visits that stress the babies. No removing them from care without consent. She sat back down and slid a stack of preliminary forms across the desk. These start the process, she said. You will sign them as Claire Mason. We don't drag Hartwell into this unless he or his new partner try to weaponize your finances. Claire picked up the pen. Her hand shook once. Then steadied, she signed. Claire Mason. Her personal phone buzzed on the table. A text from Rita. Hotel pattern confirmed. Multiple nights. All overlapping his late work claims. Documenting everything. Grace glanced at the valet ticket still crumpled in Claire's hand. We'll attach that to the investigator's packet, she said. It's not just that he cheated, it's that he did it while his children were in intensive care. Courts care about priorities. Grace picked up her own phone and dialed quickly. Lionel, she said when he answered. This is Grace and Becky. I represent Claire Mason in a custody and dissolution matter. I need written confirmation that her Hartwell Trust assets are insulated as separate property and that no public disclosures tie her to the Kleinrace acquisition yet. She listened, nodded once, then ended the call. A second call came in a few moments later. Grace put it on speaker briefly. This is Nurse Talia Brooks from the NICU, a calm voice said. Mrs. Mason told me you might call. I can confirm dates and times where the mother was present and the father was not. I've documented his missed visits neutrally in the chart. Thank you, Nurse Brooks, Grace said. We may need a written statement later. No opinions, just times and dates. I understand, Talia replied. Babies need consistency. The call ended. Grace looked back at Claire. One more question. You said your husband is involved with his boss. Does that boss still work for the company you quietly control? Claire nodded. Yes, Marissa Klein. But the board doesn't know about the affair yet. Grace exhaled, her mind already rearranging strategy. Then we will do this in two lanes, she said. Family court and corporate governance. You will not fire him in a fit of rage. You will not storm any offices. We will let compliance, conflict policies, and judges do the talking. She closed the folder, her tone cool and surgical. We serve him, she said, at the exact moment he feels untouchable. Claire stood. The weight in her chest was still there. But now it was organized, labeled, and held by someone who refused to let her beg for what the law already owed her. Outside, the city kept moving. Somewhere across town, Evan was rehearsing vows he should never have been free to say. And very soon, someone would walk into that carefully decorated life and hand him paperwork he wouldn't be able to charm his way past. The cursor blinked like a metronome. Claire sat in the narrow parent chair by the window, her laptop balanced on her knees. The NICU was dim. Machines hummed. The triplets slept under a steady blue glow. She created a new folder on her desktop. Name, Truth, not Revenge, not Evan, Truth. Inside it, she created subfolders. Medical calls, Rita. Investigation, workplace, NICU records. She copied and scanned charts, discharge summaries, and Noah's DSAT episodes. She imported the audio file of Evan's call. She saved her Notes app screenshot where she'd logged missed visits. Her phone buzzed. Rita. Claire stepped into the hallway before answering. I have a clean timeline, Rita said. All from legal sources. Later that day, they sat across from each other in a small conference room the hospital used for financial counseling. The table was too big for just two people. Rita spread out documents like puzzle pieces. Hotel valet receipts, she began. Exterior security cameras in public spaces near the hotel and publicly posted event photos, she continued. You can't see anything intimate, just arrivals and departures. Time-stamped. Him and Miss Klein arriving within minutes of each other, leaving hours later. again and again. Claire's throat tightened, but her face stayed composed. Rita pointed to another printout. Restaurant bookings public system, no hacking. Her assistant often booked for client plus guest. The guest arrived and left with your husband. She flipped a page in her notes. One more thing. His assistant forwarded a few calendar invitations voluntarily after HR quietly reached out. She didn't want her name tied to what's coming. All that goes into the workplace folder. This isn't about proving he cheated, Rita said. That's obvious. This is about establishing a pattern of choice. Where he was when he claimed to be somewhere else. Courts care about patterns. Patterns stand, Claire said, echoing her own words from nights before. Rita gave a small nod. I'll send everything digitally to your encrypted share. Label it with dates. Your lawyer will know how to package it. That evening, after checking on the babies again, Claire waited in the driver's seat of a borrowed car in the shadow of her husband's office building. She watched employees leave, watched the lights in the top floor offices flicker off one by one. Finally, Jules walked out. He spotted her and hesitated. He slid into the passenger seat, glancing around as if someone might have followed him even into the half-lit parking lot. I shouldn't be here, he said. But I saw you once in the lobby when you dropped Evan lunch before. Everything. You look like someone who deserved the truth. Claire didn't argue. I'm not here to ruin his career, she said. I'm here to protect my children. I need to understand what kind of environment their father chose over them. Jules nodded, his jaw tightened. Marissa has done this before, he said. She finds ambitious guys who feel overlooked. She offers mentorship that crosses lines. They get fast-tracked for promotions, copied on emails they shouldn't see yet, introduced to investors as up-and-coming prospects. He scrolled through his phone and opened an email thread. He turned the screen toward her. Subject lines, policy exceptions, executive discretion. Marissa, overriding HR concerns about perceived favoritism and boundary issues. This isn't personal, Jules said. It's a pattern. If compliance looks, they'll see that Evan's not the first. He's just the most reckless while his life outside was falling apart. Claire studied the emails, memorizing key phrases. She didn't take screenshots. She didn't want Jules caught in a crossfire. You've helped more than you know, she said. Later, a condensed version of Rita's timeline and the policy excerpts Jules had shown her went out from an unmarked courier address. Not to gossip sites, not to social media, just to one department. Compliance. Across town, under fluorescent lights, Noah Vance sat in his cramped compliance office. A thick anonymous packet sat on his desk. He opened it. Inside, copies of hotel receipts, public photos, clipped email threads, and a timeline that matched everything Rita had built. No personal attacks, no insults, just dates, facts, and policy references. He read the cover note, submitted anonymously for review. Potential conflict of interest, favoritism, and abuse of executive discretion involving senior executive M. Klein and mid-level manager E. Mason. Noah adjusted his glasses. This isn't gossip, he said quietly to himself. This is evidence. Board chair Malcolm Reyes stepped in, closing the door behind him. You've seen the packet? Malcolm asked. Noah held it up. If we move on this, it has to be because of conduct, not because someone is angry about a wedding or a divorce. Malcolm nodded. Make sure it's bulletproof. If it's personal, it dies. If it's misconduct, it stands. It stands, Noah said. Down the hall, Vivian Klein typed an email draft with a subject line she thought would trend well. Executive romance sparks inspiration. She paused when two words drifted in from the corridor. Compliance audit. Her fingers froze. She hit select all on the draft, deleted it. Back at the hospital, Nurse Talia approached Claire at the nurse's station. I printed this for you, Talia said. It's a copy of the log where we note parental presence. I made a duplicate for myself in case the original gets misplaced. Claire looked at the stack of times and dates, her name in the present column, Evan's name increasingly blank. Thank you, Claire said. Children deserve consistency, Talia replied. If the law needs to see who showed up, it will. That night, Claire sat back in her chair and opened the truth folder again. It was no longer empty. Doctor. Raman's notes. Noah's near-fatal desat. Calls. The recording of Evan choosing Marissa while Noah struggled to breathe. Rita. Investigation. Receipts, timelines, photos. Workplace. Jules's forwarded policy threads summarized in Claire's own notes. NICU records. Talia's logs. Her phone buzzed. Rita again. They're planning an engagement announcement. Some kind of public reveal around their wedding. Timing soon. Claire looked from the screen to the three incubators. They're about to celebrate a new love story, she thought, while I'm building a record of what that love cost. Outside the window, the city lights glowed. Somewhere across town, two adults were picking floral arrangements and photographers. In a quiet NICU, a mother was picking dates and documents. One of those stories would be rewritten. The other would be entered into evidence. The cameras flashed before the officiant even said, "I now pronounce." The event space had no windows and no clocks, just soft, controlled lighting and too many reflective surfaces. Crystal marble, metallic accents, everything polished to match Marissa Klein's image. At the end of a white aisle runner, Evan Mason stood beside her. His suit fit better than his conscience. He smiled for the photographers, shoulders back, eyes bright on command. This was the life he thought he'd traded up for. Champagne flutes waited on mirrored trays. A string quartet played quietly. Corporate friends mingled with extended family and select investors. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a PR event for a senior executive. In one corner, Vivian Klein moved like a director on set. "Keep Marissa slightly ahead of him in every shot," she murmured to a photographer. "It reads leader. An angle away from the bar, no bottles in the background." Evan didn't hear any of that. He was focused on acting like a man who had made the right choice. In the back row, watching with a closed expression, stood Malcolm Reyes and Noah Vance. Officially, they were there because Marissa had invited key stakeholders from the company, and it would have looked aggressive not to attend. Unofficially, they were there because a compliance audit was underway, and Malcolm wanted eyes on everything. "Remember," Malcolm said under his breath, "we respond to conduct, not to scandal. Let them hang themselves with their own decisions." Noah nodded, holding a thin folder under his arm. The vows wrapped up. Applause. Posed kiss. A fresh burst of camera flashes. Then, as the couple stepped off the small platform, the crowd parted not for a photo, but for a woman in a dark suit. Grace Mabecki. She walked forward calmly, not rushing, not hesitant. This was not a scene to her. This was a job. "Mr. Mason," she said clearly, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "You've been served." She held out a sealed envelope and a clipboard. Conversation stuttered. A violin string squeaked. Someone near the back gasped softly. Evan stared at her, smile faltering. What is this?" "Petition for dissolution of marriage," Grace said, accompanied by an emergency custody motion and temporary support request. "We attempted home service. You were not available." Evan's throat worked. He didn't move. "In this jurisdiction," Grace continued, "formal service requires acknowledgement. You can sign now, or I can ask a process server to block your exit. Either way, you will be served." Marissa stepped forward, anger tightening her jaw. "This is wildly inappropriate," she said. "You can't storm a private event. This is a legal notification delivered in a public venue with ample witnesses," Grace replied. "You chose to make your new relationship public while leaving 3 premature infants in intensive care. The law is simply catching up to your choices." A few guests looked away, suddenly fascinated by their glasses. Evan's hand trembled as he took the pen and scribbled his name on the receipt form. The envelope felt heavy in his hand. Vivian snapped at a nearby photographer. "Stop shooting," she hissed. "Now," but it was too late. Several guests had already lifted phones, then guiltily lowered them again. Grace turned slightly. "Miss Klein," she said. Marissa stiffened. "Yes?" A second envelope was held out to her. "Notice of internal investigation," Grace said. "Conflict of interest and misuse of executive discretion. The board's outside counsel prepared this. I'm simply the courier, not the author." Marissa snatched the envelope, opened it just enough to see the heading, Notice of Investigation, Compliance and Ethics, and closed it again. Her eyes flicked instinctively to Malcolm, who remained expressionless. Vivian saw the letterhead. Her expression changed calculation, replacing loyalty. She slid her phone into her bag. "No more posts today. This event is over," Marissa said through clenched teeth. "Everyone, please give us a moment." The string quartet stopped mid-phrase. Minutes later, Evan found himself alone in a side hallway, fluorescent exit signs casting sickly light down the beige corridor. He dialed Claire. She answered on the second ring. There was a soft hiss in the background. NICU oxygen, not a party. You're doing this now? Evan hissed. At my wedding? You're trying to ruin me? Claire's voice was flat, calm, different. No, Evan, she said. You ruined you when you left 3 sick newborns and called it choosing happiness. I'm just documenting it and letting the law read it out loud. This is insane, he snapped. You're jealous, you're bitter. I'm organized, Claire replied. He heard a faint monitor beep behind her, the life he'd walked out on. He opened his mouth to spew something else, but she spoke first. Also, she added quietly, tell Marissa the board meeting is tomorrow, 10 a.m. She might want to read her investigation notice properly before then. What board meeting? He demanded. The line went dead. He stood alone in the hallway, wedding music muffled behind closed doors, an envelope of legal documents in his left hand and a new ring on his right. Somewhere else in the city, a different envelope was being copied, labeled, and added to a board packet. Truth wasn't rushing, it was arriving exactly on schedule. The boardroom doors closed with a heavy, padded thud that felt like a verdict. The next morning, Evan stepped into the glass-walled conference room with Marissa. He'd barely slept. The envelope from Grace had sat on his table all night, unopened after the first page. But this room, this table, still felt like power to him. He clung to that. Around the table sat board members, legal counsel, and Noah Vance with a thick binder. At the head of the table was Malcolm Reyes, hands clasped, expression unreadable. Only one chair remained empty. In front of it, a nameplate. C. Hartwell. Controlling stakeholder Evan frowned and leaned toward Marissa. Who's Hartwell? He whispered. Marissa didn't answer. Her jaw clenched. The door opened. Lionel Graves entered first, carrying his leather portfolio. Behind him walked a woman in simple clothes, hair pulled back, no expensive jewelry, just a plain silver ring on her finger. Claire, not in hospital sweats, not in exhaustion, just steady. Evan's brain refused to connect the pieces. Claire? He said, pushing back from his chair. She didn't flinch. In here, I'm Hartwell, she said quietly. Please sit down, Evan. Lionel took the empty seat beside her. Claire sat behind the nameplate. Malcolm cleared his throat. This emergency board session is to address internal findings from compliance and the arrival of the controlling stakeholder, Miss Hartwell, whose interest recently crossed the majority threshold. Evan looked from the nameplate to Claire, then to Lionel. You bought the company? He stammered. No, Claire corrected calmly. I acquired controlling interest in the holding structure that owns it, through a family trust. Before you left, not after. It hit him then. All the unknown secure line notifications, the quiet way she had handled paperwork, the fact that she never seemed stressed about bills, no matter how hard he thought he was working. Noah opened the binder. This review concerns conflict of interest, abuse of executive discretion, and failure to disclose a power imbalanced relationship, he said. His tone was clinical. He began reading. Dates, emails, hotel receipts, exceptions logged under executive discretion that directly benefited Evan's career progression. Mr. Mason received preferential access to investors and high-visibility projects after entering a personal relationship with his direct senior, Noah said. There was no disclosure to HR or compliance. This violates our ethics and conflict policies. Marissa leaned forward. I mentored a promising employee, she said. Anything beyond that is his private business. Malcolm raised an eyebrow. Private business doesn't get billed to company accounts. He flipped to a page of expense reports. Hotel charges coded as strategy retreats, he read, multiple times, all coinciding with nights Mr. Mason's wife reports he was working late while their infants were hospitalized. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Noah turned another page. We also have internal correspondence from HR, raising concerns about a pattern of similar relationships in prior years, dismissed under executive discretion, and we have evidence that an internal communications plan was being drafted to spin this relationship as inspirational to staff. Vivian's deleted headline, resurrected in email form. Marissa's eyes flicked briefly toward the doorway, as if hoping Vivian might appear and save her. Vivian did not. She'd already extracted herself. This is personal, Marissa insisted. Someone is trying to weaponize. No, Malcolm said quietly. This is documented. He folded his hands. Based on compliance's findings and the controlling stakeholders' concurrence, he continued, the board has decided on immediate corrective actions. He looked at Evan first. Mr. Mason, effective immediately. Your employment is terminated for violation of conflict of interest policy and participation in an undisclosed relationship with a superior that directly influenced your advancement. Evan surged to his feet. You can't do this. I earned. Sit down, Malcolm said, not raising his voice. Evan sat. Malcolm turned to Marissa. Miss Klein, you are placed on administrative leave pending full legal review. Your access to internal systems is suspended. Your role will be evaluated in light of potential liability exposure. Marissa's lips trembled for half a second before she caught herself. Through it all, Claire said nothing. When it was over, she spoke only once. We will also be reviewing our policies around family emergencies, she said. No parent should feel they must choose between career survival and staying by their child's bedside. No one argued. Weeks later, a different gavel tapped. Judge Helena Duarte presided over the family courtroom, a smaller, solemn space where the stakes were heavier than any boardroom. Claire sat beside Grace at the petitioner's table. Evan sat across from them with a different lawyer and a much thinner folder. Grace stood. Your Honor, she said, the children were born premature and required extended NICU care. During this time, the petitioner, Mrs. Mason, remained consistently at the hospital. The respondent, Mr. Mason, began missing visits, stopped financial support, and left the marital home to live with his superior at work. She handed up Dr. Rahman's written statement and the NICU logs. The medical records show repeated serious desaturation episodes for one child, Noah, Grace continued. During one such event, as staff scrambled to stabilize the baby, Mr. Mason called and announced, quote, I can't do this anymore, and stated that he was choosing happiness with another woman who understands him. The recording played briefly in court. Evan's voice echoed in the quiet room. Claire stared straight ahead, eyes fixed on a point just above the judge's shoulder. Nurse Talia took the stand. She was there every day, Talia said simply, gesturing toward Claire. He stopped coming. I don't have opinions in my notes. I just recorded presence and absence. Evan's lawyer tried to argue stress, burnout, financial pressure. Tried to say the recording was taken out of context. Grace countered calmly. Context, Your Honor, she said. The context is a neonatal unit, a baby unable to breathe, and a father stating he is choosing a different life while promising to send money when he can. The law doesn't evaluate feelings. It evaluates conduct. Judge Duarte looked over the document slowly. At this stage, she said, we are not litigating every emotional detail of a marriage. We are deciding what is safest and most stable for 3 medically vulnerable children. She looked at Evan. You may rebuild your life however you wish, she said, but you may not do so at the cost of abandoning legal responsibilities. She signed the order. She signed the order. Emergency, temporary sole physical custody to the petitioner, she said. Joint legal custody, pending review, with decision-making authority temporarily favoring the petitioner in medical matters. Support is ordered in accordance with the respondent's documented income level. Supervised visitation only, at a court-approved center, until further review. The gavel tapped. Claire exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Evan's shoulders slumped. In a quiet hallway afterward, Evan leaned against the wall the same way Claire had leaned against hospital walls so many nights before. He called Marissa. No answer. She stepped away from the nurse's station to answer, keeping the NICU doors in sight. You were the owner, he said, voice shaking. You had money this whole time? You could have made everything easy? Why didn't you tell me? I was your wife, Claire said softly. That should have been enough reason to stay. He had no answer. The call ended. Days later, in a rented office she was using to meet with her own lawyers, Marissa stood in front of Evan. The glow was gone. The lighting was unkind. You're unemployed, she said. You're under a custody order. You're tagged in an ethics report. Investors are nervous about any association with you. She slipped the ring from her finger and placed it in his palm like a refunded receipt. You said you loved me, Evan whispered. I loved winning, Marissa said. Right now you're not a win, you're a liability. She walked out without looking back. Evan stared at the ring in his palm. The power he had chased had no use for him now. Down the hall, in a hospital room he no longer had free access to, Claire watched three tiny chests rise and fall, and chose not revenge, but something colder and more permanent. Boundaries. The monitor alarm chirped once, then settled. Claire's head snapped up out of pure reflex, eyes locking on Noah's numbers. They dipped briefly, then steadied. She exhaled, shoulders relaxing. The NICU felt different now. The lights were still soft, the machine still present, but the atmosphere had shifted from crisis to cautious hope. The triplets were bigger, their cheeks softer, their fingers stronger. Noah slept with a nasal cannula instead of a full mask. Lily was learning to suck from a tiny bottle. Emma's chest rose and fell in a rhythm that no longer terrified anyone. Claire sat between their stations, a worn children's book open in her hands. And the light came back every morning, she read quietly, no matter how long the night had been. Your voice sounds like you again, Sonia said from behind her. She leaned in the doorway, a coffee in each hand. I never left, Claire said. I was just busy surviving. Her phone vibrated on the chair beside her. Grace. Claire stepped into the hallway before answering. Final dissolution order came through, Grace said. The temporary orders are now permanent unless he petitions for modification later and can prove meaningful change and consistent involvement. Claire leaned against the wall. Custody. Sole physical custody confirmed, Grace said. Joint legal technically on paper, but with primary medical decision-making vested in you given his history. Support order enforced with wage garnishment whenever he has earnings on record. Protective clauses remain regarding unscheduled contact. Claire's eyes stung, but the tears didn't fall. Thank you, she said. A courier arrived later with a sealed envelope. The final decree. Claire signed the acknowledgement of receipt next to her name. Petitioner. Claire Mason. Respondent. Evan Mason. She closed the folder gently. When she turned back toward the unit, she saw him. Evan stood at the far end of the corridor, just outside the area restricted to authorized parents. His shoulders were hunched, his suit wrinkled, the confidence that once defined him nowhere in sight. Claire, he said as she approached. She stepped outside the unit doors and let them close behind her. The clear plastic window separated them from the children. You look different, he said. Stronger, colder. No, she replied. Just clearer. I didn't know, he blurted. About the money, about the company. If I knew you were, he searched for the word that rich, I wouldn't have left. The sentence hung there like a confession he didn't realize was devastating. That's exactly why you can't come back, Claire said softly. You should have stayed because I was your wife, because they were your children, not because I could pay your bills and pull your career out of the fire. I'm their father, he said, eyes wet. You're biologically their father, Claire replied. Legally, you're a non-custodial parent with supervised visitation. What you choose to become beyond that is between you and the schedule the court approved. Footsteps approached. Grace appeared beside them, her presence quiet but anchoring. Supervised visitation is at the center on Wednesdays and Saturdays, she reminded him. If you miss those, it will be documented. Evan looked at Claire, hoping for some softening in her eyes. She turned away before he could find it. Dignity over cruelty. He walked down the hallway, shoulders slumped, past parents holding balloons and diaper bags. Claire re-entered the NICU and closed the door firmly. Across town, in a sleek apartment that no longer felt like a prize, Marissa sat alone on her couch. The news scrolled quietly on the TV. Headlines flickered. Executive placed on leave amid ethics investigation. Anonymous stakeholder tightens corporate governance company announces new family support initiatives. Her phone buzzed. A message from a powerful contact flashed on the screen. We can't be associated with you right now. Too much exposure. We'll revisit later maybe. Marissa stared at her reflection in the darkened TV for a long time. For the first time in years, no one was asking her for advice, access, or approval. Back at the hospital, Elder Miriam Okoye, a hospital chaplain who had quietly visited once a week, stood beside Claire at the window, looking in at the triplets. Some people think love is proven in holidays and parties, Miriam said softly. But love is proven in hospital corridors, in sleepless nights, in showing up when no one is watching. Claire nodded. I learned the hard way who understood that and who didn't. Then you have already won the most important case, Miriam said, and gently squeezed her arm. A few weeks later, Claire walked into a private meeting room downtown, not as a patient's mother, not as a scared wife, but as Claire Hartwell, controlling stakeholder. Across the table sat Malcolm and Noah. Lionel was there too, taking notes. Claire placed a folder on the table. "These are the changes I want," she said, "not as punishment, but as prevention." Malcolm opened the folder. Inside, drafted policy proposals. Clearer ethics rules about supervisor-subordinate relationships. Mandatory conflict disclosure. A family medical support fund for employees with hospitalized children. Protected leave policies for NICU parents without career retaliation. "You could have used your position to destroy them," Malcolm observed. "I didn't buy into this company to destroy anyone," Claire said. "I bought in to protect families like mine from people who treat other humans as disposable." Noah nodded slowly. "We can implement this," he said. "It will make us better." Later, in a quiet room just off the NICU, Claire signed one more document, not on a legal pleading. Not on a board resolution, just a simple hospital form transferring the triplets from critical status to step-down care as they prepared for eventual discharge. She signed, "Parent, Guardian, Claire Hartwell Mason. Power and love, finally aligned under the same name." She returned to the incubator's now partially open cribs and kissed each child's forehead. "Mom's here," she whispered, "and I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the first light of morning crept through the high windows, touching the monitors, the metal rails, and the three small faces in a soft, pale glow. He thought marrying power would save him. He never realized he had betrayed the only power that was quietly trying to save his family. I hope you enjoyed watching this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. I'll see you in my next video.